Okay, I'm going to try a little experiment and see if I can videotape sideways. Then you'll see the bigger picture and convert it when I upload it. We'll see how that goes. So this was the painting we did in class, and I did a couple of these. Okay, the Hawaiian scene. I'm going to try doing this video sideways to see if it films better. But this is what we did in class, and I promise to repeat that. So I'm going to take the one that I started, which is this one, on the second half of the class, and we'll just finish up the sky, and we'll try to put in some more definition to the waves here and see how that goes. Just a reminder on the colors, we used Prussian, Enhancer for the water, Cobalt and Cerulean for the sky, or Prussian and Imperial Purple, sorry. And then Burnt Sienna and Purple and Cerulean for the sand. So those are the options that we have for colors. All right, so we're just going to start with our sky. And I'm going to wet it down just to the horizon. Right about there is probably good. And it's pretty wet right now, so I can't apply right away, but what I'm going to do is mix up the paint that I want to use. For the sky, we're going to use Cobalt and Cerulean. So I think I'm just gonna wet those. Actually, I'm gonna wet all of my paints here. And find my mixing brush. So that's the Cerulean. Looks like we got some hairs in there. And this is the Cobalt. I probably don't need a lot for this one because it's a very small painting. And I want it to look pretty atmospheric. So I'm just going to get a little bit more. And then apply that. It was, oops, we're not pinned down. Let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that it's wet enough just by testing in an area, and that looks pretty good. I'm gradually going to fade this out a bit. Not as wet over there. So I'm just going to start applying water as I get down towards the horizon. And there was some clouds just down at the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of leave room for those clouds. And I'm going to put a tiny bit of burnt sienna here because I can really make that look like it's underneath the clouds. But I have to be careful. I don't want it to be dry there. So I'm just going to double check that it's wet enough there. It's applying a bit of that gray, but that's fine. Okay. And then putting the burnt sienna in there, it looks dark right now, but it will look like it's further in the distance, and it will help highlight the horizon a little bit. Now, if you think that's too much, you could always apply a tiny bit more water, but if you do that, you're going to have to wipe off your brush first. So it looks like it might be a tiny bit too much. So I wiped off my brush and I'm just gathering a little bit up. And then I want to kind of highlight that this is clouds. So I might just put a little bit more blue into this part here. So they look like clouds on the horizon. Okay, and then I can blend that up. Very delicate touch on that. So that's good enough for the sky. I know we did that part in the class, but I wanted to finish this one and show it to you as we progress. And our goal was to mimic the softness and looseness of this one, which we're going to try to do. So that should be a challenge, but it's always a good idea to, copy a style that you like and see if you can achieve that style. So I'm just going to keep that handy as a reference and see if I can do some of the effects that they've done in this one. Okay, when we did this in class, we did the sand, but it's not dark enough. And we did some of the cerulean. So we're going to try to leave this bit of white that's along here, so it looks almost like a wave. So I'm only going to go up close to that, and I'm just going to wet down that section there so that we know that that's where we're going to stop. Now it shouldn't be totally wet, so if you put too much water on, which I just did, you can dry off your brush and just wipe that out a bit. But that should be enough. And then I mixed my sand mixture, which I'm going to put on the bottom on dry paper. And so we're going to start with that. I might get a bigger brush because this brush doesn't hold enough paint for that much coverage. I'll try this one. These Chinese brushes always have great coverage, so we'll start with that. Okay, so my sand color was Imperial Purple, Burnt Sienna, and some cerulean. So it's going to be quite dark at the bottom with this mixture. So it has a bit of a yellow tinge, but I'm adding more water as I go up towards the top. So it's a bit paler here, but darker at the bottom. And you can actually have it darker over here too. But just let that blend in. And now we're going in with the cerulean. And here we're trying to get that right under these waves here. And see how it brings out the white that was in those waves. That's what we want to accomplish. There is a harder line where the cerulean meets the sand, but for now we're just going to leave that like that. And you'll notice under these rocks, the cerulean almost gets darker over in this where it's shaded. So I've added a little bit of ultramarine blue to that area, but keep these edges soft for now. So that is step number 2 on the sand. Okay, and next step is to darken out this area a bit in the back, give it some more color. what I would do there is mix our cerulean again. Maybe make a new puddle here because I kind of messed up that one with multiple colors. And then we wanted to make that cobalt color, which if I recall, that was cobalt and cerulean. This, oh, Prussian, sorry, it was Prussian. So we're gonna make Prussian. And to give it a greener tinge, we added a tiny bit of Hansa, I believe. We'll just mix a little bit of that. We don't want this too bright, but we want it bright enough that you can actually see these waves that we did at the back. So it starts with almost just cobalt. And we're going to go along there. I'm doing this on dry, which will give me a good sense of how dark it's going to be. It's going to go lighter than what's there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that green that we had here. Extend that down. And then maybe a tiny bit more green just on top of this wave here. So, and I can kind of shape the wave. If it's too green, I'm going to go back into a bit of that cobalt. And then in order to make it look wave-like, I'm just going to grab a clean brush, dab it off, dip it into some of this color, not too wet, and just have these, just put little dots here and there. It is in the distance, so you're not going to see too much of this, but it always helps to highlight it a little bit. So that's going to become more evident. And then we had this patch in here that was, you know, a bit of burnt sienna, a bit of cobalt. It had a few colors in it underneath this wave area. And I think what we'll do there is we will wet it first, because we don't want this too dark. And then we're going to take the combination of those colors and kind of throw it in here. If you have white spots here, just try to leave them. Okay, and then that's going to kind of highlight this part here as well. So I'm just hitting and missing some of the areas of this. So it looks like moving water. Hopefully that does the trick. This band back here might be a bit too big. These are very flat waves back here, actually. Starting to look a little bit like that, but not as much as one would like. But the trick is to keep this kind of soft edged as you go. So I'm just softening up a few spots there. And it helps to have this curvature here somewhat defined. Maybe, and particularly under here, it's going to look a bit like it's more of a rolling wave. Not exactly like the picture, but it does help to define those a bit. And try and make it look a bit curvy. And my lines are very straight here. If it was a wave, it would look a little bit curvy. Something like that. So we're getting there on that one. Okay. And you could bring, well, this looks more like a wave as well here. But then that raises a question on why does this stop here? So I'm going to fill that in a bit. Just right up to that line that I made. I think that's okay for now.